Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Shake Sales. I'm your host, Maggie Bloom, the sales evangelist at Mailshake. And today we have Sam McKenna here. Thank you so much for being on here, Sam. Sam is the founder of #Sam Sales. And I told her before this, but I'm super nervous to have her on here today because we're talking about the subject of Show Me You Know Me, which when we first connected, something that's so small world is we both lived in Switzerland before, not in the same parts. I was in the German part. Sam grew up or was born in the French part. But I was just super nervous about that today. But that's why we're talking about the subject of Show Me You Know Me, which is right on her background where she's at. So Sam, thank you so much for being here today. Do you mind taking some time to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Maggie. So nice to be here and support so much of what Mailshake does. So glad to be a guest and supporting you guys again. For those of you who don't know me, I'm founder and CEO of #Sam Sales, as Maggie said. I have been in enterprise sales for about 15 years. It's spent half of my career as an IC, half of my career as an individual or as an executive leader, and then wrapped up my time in corporate America at LinkedIn, working with the LinkedIn Sales Navigator line of business as a leader there before starting Sam Sales. So we're about just over 3 years old. We've got an all-women team of 13, really proud to say, and have grown to about 160 clients, so really short in that period of time. And as Maggie said, I'm originally from Switzerland. I love to drive on my time off and have a husband and 2 little puppies at home, and that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Yeah, and incredible work that you've done so far. I love that you have an all-woman team and that you've built it all the way up to 13. And today we're talking about something that you've made famous on a hashtag and also just a concept in general that I think is super important, as I like to talk about, and I think a lot of other people on LinkedIn like to talk about, of really getting to know your buyer. And that there's been a lot of processes in the past with sales where we're kind of stuck in our own timeline, our own process as salespeople, because we've learned that from other salespeople, but really flipping the switch and focusing on our buyers. So we'll be talking about Show Me You Know Me. And from what I've learned, there's 3 areas of it. So getting to know the human that you're going to be reaching out to, or, connecting with, the company, and the space. So could you just give us kind of like a quick, elevator pitch of this basically, and then an example of what you mean by those 3 areas?
Yeah, I think Show Me You Know Me is so important, right? Because it's a part of your sales process from the very first email you send all the way to, a client has been working with you for 10 years, 20 years, whatever it may be. And I think the element of Show Me You Know Me, kind of like discovery, is never done. Understanding what's going on with our clients, who they are, what's happening in their professional and personal lives. There's so much that we have to do in terms of Show Me You Know Me with our buyers. So I would say a couple of things, right? When we look at the human, let's say even before we do our outreach over an email, who's the person that we're reaching out to? We're reaching out to somebody who used to work for our existing clients, who knows people we have in common, who lives in our hometown, who went to a school we're super passionate about for some kind of sporting event. What do we know about them? Now, there's a lot of people who have nothing available on their LinkedIn profile, right? It's like a dust ball going by. We're like, what do we do now? Right? Which is where the company comes into play. So take a look at their company. What's happening with their organization? What can we find out? Even small organizations like Sam Sales have information on their website, news releases, podcasts, press releases, all kinds of things going on, charity events, sponsorships, Giving Tuesday promotions, whatever that might be. There's information you can find to tie organically and authentically to who you are or what your company stands for, to do a great Show Me You Know Me. And then last thing is the space. So what vertical are you selling to? Is it tech sales? Is it the law firm professional services space? Who are you selling to and what do you know about them? How can you tie something relevant to what you do, how you serve your clients, what their priorities might be, or that you can assume they are because you work with buyers just like them, and then do that Show Me You Know Me. And then I think that bleeds, right? It bleeds through our discovery calls. Let's say we get an inbound lead and we book it. Let's say our BDR books it for us. What do we do when we show up to that call? Tell you what we hear most reps do is say things like, hey, Sam, where are you based? What brought you to Sam Sales? And we're like, cool, it's on my LinkedIn profile. And I started the company. And so you think about that, right? How often we see that lack of Show Me You Know Me, that lack of research, that lack of narrative, that lack of homework. And somebody shows up not even knowing anything about, let alone the buyer, but let alone the company. So think of what we can do there. I also think that show me, know me human element where we often miss is we focus just on who they are professionally and we miss the personal side. So what did we learn about them over time? What do they like to eat? Or do they have kiddos, pets at home? Are they traveling? Like, let's get to know them as humans because, it's shocking, but that's what they are.
Yeah, it can be hard to separate the two of them. And yeah, I mean, there's times, where I hear sales reps that they don't even really take a look at the CRM before they get on a call with someone.
Yeah.
Or
yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry. What were you going to say?
No, without a doubt. And that is 100% part of that show me, know me element, right? So let's say you have a CRM like Insightly. And so pop into your CRM, take a quick look at the person or the people that you're meeting with. Now, it's a little trickier if you're meeting with like Bill Johnson, who is a very, very generic name, but take a quick look at Bill Johnson at his previous role and type in Bill Johnson plus previous company in your CRM. Does that person know your company? Are they a previous buyer? Have they been attached to previous opportunity records? Is this the third time they're going to be a client? Organizations do such a bad job, frankly, because technology is really bad in terms of tracking this, but of tracking movements of former clients, former influencers, all that stuff. So take a quick look at your CRM, right? Like pop into an Insightly record, take a quick look and see, is there something in there that I can find out about this person to say, hey, Bill, I see this is the third time you're talking to us. That's so great. Or it looks like you've purchased us in the past. What an awesome show me, you know me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it just gives the sales rep, I mean, we're talking about this all from the buyer standpoint of, making them feel more comfortable, making them know that you've done your research before getting on a call with them. But I think for the rep, it actually, whenever I do more research or I have some of those things that I can mention on a call, I feel more confident in my own sales process because not saying that the call is going to go exponentially well just because I know them before, but it's going to start that conversation off where I feel more comfortable. And it doesn't mean that they have to purchase at the end or something like that, but I just feel good about myself when I'm walking into that conversation as opposed to kind of being left in the dark about it, because a lot of what you're going to talk about is all about that buyer on that call, whether you're doing discovery or demo.
It's like when we present, we present at our QBR, we present a slide deck, in something where we're speaking, we feel much more confident when we've rehearsed, right? We already know what to say. We already know how to go through those motions. So when we do that research, when we do that preparation, we show up prepared, like instantly more confident and be able to have the conversation than just showing up and winging it. I think great tie there, especially for those of us who might find ourselves a little nervous on calls, a great way to amp up your confidence is that preparation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I'm one of those people that I really like to do research. I kind of feel like I'm this detective when it comes to sales before reaching out to people and or even getting on a conversation with them. But sometimes turning that into a compelling message or feeling comfortable about bringing that up in a call like naturally is the challenge for me, especially like the personal stuff that you were talking about. Like I may want to relate with someone on that, but it might be just like, where do I bring this up without making it sound awkward?
Creepy.
In either writing or when you get on a call with someone.
I think this is such an interesting, objection that we hear too back from reps because they're like, what do I say? How do I do it? But I think one of the things to think about what you just said, right, is exactly what I say all the time in terms of like our detective work. Like I think sales is just a huge game of Sherlock Holmes. And it really is, right? Like I love to like sleuth around, look through records, find common channels and people to talk to. Like there's so much neat stuff that you can do with data to make sales not that hard, I promise. The thing I would say too of like, how do we leverage this information? It is expected that sales reps show up without that preparation, without that research. And the reason it's expected is because most people don't do it. They don't take the time to do it. So it's also expected though, that the information's out there. It's on our LinkedIn's, it's on our company pages, etc. So if you even think about how to dip your toes in the water and say, Maggie, it's so great to meet you. By the way, I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you spent some time in Switzerland. That's so neat. That's originally where I'm from. Like, what a great way to connect. Now, if I said, Maggie, I see you spent some time in Switzerland, and I just stared at you for a minute, you'd be like, what about it? So make sure there's some kind of authentic tie to, and it's the same thing for outreach, right? People who email me and they're like, I see you went to FSU. Do you want to buy my stuff? And I'm like, no. What about FSU, right? So make sure to put those ties together. I will say, right, thinking about where to source that information. Go, like you can do a simple Google search. Anything on LinkedIn, I think is totally appropriate. Anything on the company page is appropriate. Any podcasts, articles they've written, anything like that, completely appropriate. I would, of course, avoid the Facebook pictures and the Instagram pictures. Maybe TikTok's fine if there's some TikTok sensation or things to stay away from. I'd probably stay away from the Facebook and Instagrams and pictures like, that sort of thing. TikTok is fine if the person is a TikTok sensation or trying to be, and then they'll super appreciate you reaching out and noticing that. But again, anything that's professionally available is fine. And I will say one more thing. If it is something personal on their LinkedIn profile, totally engage with them on it. Because what I find sometimes people are like, well, this person talks about being a dad or about doing this or about their dog's names. And is that creepy that I know their dog's names? No, because you found it on LinkedIn, right? Like where it is professionally available. So hats off to you for doing your research and mention one or two of those things. No need to mention 19. One or two are fine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up a good point of, it's not just mentioning maybe these things you have in common or something you noticed about them, but it's actually giving some context to it. And I think it's the same way of like how to make discovery questions not uncomfortable sometimes too, is giving context to it. So it's like all those things you can add together and make it feel a bit more natural going into it.
Totally. I think I'll just say on that context piece, right? Sometimes we get in a habit, I see on discovery calls all the time, where we have a firing range of questions, right? Yeah. One after the other. And we never kind of offer context or offer a story to say like, this is why I'm asking this question. But even that, like, one of the things I want to talk to you about is XYZ for this reason. Can you tell me a little bit about, and even that context will help build that rapport and the trust that like we're going in the right direction. So great point.
Yeah, it has that curiosity because again, we can borrow a lot of things from detectives or Sherlock Holmes or I love the game Clue. But when we actually rapid fire questions, that's probably the part from detectives that we don't want to borrow.
Agreed.
Yeah. We want to make it seem a bit more natural there. So yeah, I think just adding that context and of course like the I'm curious before just makes it feel like a little less pressure on it or a little less awkward too. So great advice and how we can borrow it from there. But kind of just thinking about like what we're seeing on LinkedIn or training that sales reps are getting. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is, a lot of us are borrowing the same things from LinkedIn. And I even talk about it in the sense of like prospecting emails. Like you can do so much of prospecting emails or a subject line until it gets old because everyone else starts doing it. So a lot of buyers will walk into sales calls or get pitched the same way. So how can Show Me You Know Me help a salesperson stand out in some of those scenarios?
I think what's great about Show Me You Know Me, let's say in a subject line for an email, number one, the higher you are aiming in an organization, the harder you're going to have to work, right? So we get clients who come to us all the time and they're like, hey, can you help us, build these great subject lines for SVPs at like General Electric? And we're like, no, your reps have to do that. We'll teach them how to do it, right? That is, think about how, and I think sometimes as reps, who haven't been in that huge seniority role yet, it's impossible for us to imagine just how many people are hammering that one person every day for time on their calendar. 20, 25 emails, sales emails a day. So if your subject line, right, screams that this is a sales email, if I send you, Maggie, a note and I'm like, world-class training, best in the world, you're going to be like, and you're going to delete it immediately, right? But instead, if I take the time to just think about that Show Me You Know Me, right, and do something different, then that's how I'm going to stand out. The beauty of those subject lines is that it should be bespoke for that individual. If you're reaching out, let's say to me, and you say something like Geneva, Switzerland, plus Nickelodeon, plus, Barefoot Contessa, even if you say Geneva plus Nickelodeon plus your company name, right, I'm going to be like, well, this person's done some research on me. I have no idea what the last thing is, what that company name is, but I'm at least going to open it. And that's the thing. When we teach the idea of Show Me You Know Me, we always show some subject lines and we say, if you were reading this and this makes absolutely no sense to you, then we've done it correctly because it wasn't written for you. It was written for us. And so That's the whole idea. And then I think that the other thing I would just say, right, on that kind of personalization, how to open up increase our open rates is that first sentence. So thinking through that, what most people do, right, we see it as number one, they go right into the pitch. Number two, they do a hope this finds you well, hope you had a nice holiday. Happy Monday. There is no such thing. Don't say that to me, whatever. And we just know. We know it's either a sales email or we know that we're talking to somebody who just doesn't know what to say in the beginning. So they're using whatever they think is right, or they've borrowed that stuff from other people and they've gone in there. So I would say two things, right? You can go right into the show me you know me. Sam, I have to say, I saw the Geneva, Switzerland thing on your LinkedIn profile. That can literally be the start of your email. Or you can say something, one of our crutches that we use is, hey, Maggie, this is Sam. We've yet to be properly introduced, but I'm Sam McKenna, and then finish that sentence with what we want. We've got to think about, right, that preview text plus that first sentence or that subject line and first sentence, that's our preview text. That's the decision between an open or a swipe left, which I think is the wrong one in dating. Left, right is good, left is bad. So left is bad for emails as well because it just goes straight to delete. Yeah. I'm going to just say one more thing on the lots of advice on LinkedIn, using each other's things. I see on LinkedIn an inordinate amount of bad sales advice. And one of the things that I see with bad sales advice is when the individual focuses on themselves as the rep instead of the buyer. If we shift our mindset to be buyer-centric and customer-centric instead of selfish, you will be amazed at the things that can open up. And let me give you an example. I saw a gentleman yesterday write a script in a post that was very similar to a methodology we have, which of course we flagged for a little bit of plagiarism, but alas. And in that post, it was how to send a follow-up email, right, to get somebody's attention. And one of the things that was said in that email was, hey, Maggie, it's Sam. Listen, I know you said you were going to get red lines to me today. Thanks for that. I'm traveling at 3, so it would help if you could get this to me by 2. Can you please confirm that you can get this to me by 2? I cringe when I read that email. That's me. Instead of saying, I know the red lines were going to come back today. Any chance you've got them? I'm going to be around until 3 o'clock. If I can answer any questions for you, please let me know. Instead of it's like, I need this now and I'm demanding it. That is how we don't build long-term relationships. That's how we aggravate people. So just think about that too. Read that advice with a grain of salt. Find the people that you really value that fit you authentically to when they give that advice.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you brought up so many things that no, in a good way that I totally resonate with. And as far as, and I've heard you talk about this on a podcast before, that you were, maybe it wasn't being apprehensive to get into sales, but the one thing you thought about in sales is like, hey, I don't want to bother people. Yeah. And that email, and I felt that way too, getting into sales, like I'm never going to be in sales. And even people who knew me were like, you're going to be in sales because of that mindset. And yeah, like that me. And yeah, I'm so glad. And I'm glad people are thinking a little bit more in the buyer's shoes. And I personally love that because I think it goes back to the detectiveness of all of this. And I have a personal podcast that I do of how buyers buy. And the one question I ask people is, what's your biggest pet peeve from sales reps? Which is kind of a negative spin on it, but it's more like... But there's all these different things that you don't even think about that we do as sales reps because we do make it about me, or we listen to people who say like, hey, this worked for me in the past. And we're not thinking about our buyers behind all of this. We're just thinking about like this sales methodology that's always worked. And of course there are some, but it has to be within your buyer's whole persona of things.
Yeah. I think I'll tell you a really weird story, but for me, where I didn't want to bother anybody, I didn't want to inconvenience anybody. This goes back a few years. When I was like in middle school sleepovers, I would wake up at like 6 a.m. or whatever, and I would totally have to go to the bathroom. And I would be like, I don't want to be the first person that gets up and disturbs everybody else. So I would like lie there and wait like until 8:30 when somebody would wake up and be like, finally somebody else has rustled and I can get up. So like I hate to inconvenience people. But I think what I would say too, like the way that I really shifted the landscape of selling is that we're not inconveniencing people. They're not talking to us because we've like, berated them into, is that the right word? Berated, not berated. We've like, we badgered them into a meeting. They're talking to us because they have a challenge to solve and they are hopeful that what we've represented is something that can solve that challenge. I would say too, we get so fixated on sales methodologies, right? I must do this 97-step process in order to do this. And I must, set a mutual action plan, and I must uncover BANT and all that stuff. And here's the thing, you can do all of that while being human, conversational, not aggressive, not salesy. You can figure out BANT by never asking, who's the buyer? What's your timing like? How much money do you have? You never have to ask those questions, right? You can do all of that by being conversational, simply by saying, ending a call and saying, tell me a little bit about, we'd love to book a second call. We'd love to show you around our technology. Tell me a little bit about who else would benefit from this at your company. Or who else do you think would want to see this before deciding if it's right for you guys? Instead of being like, who's the ultimate decision maker? I always go to my weird impersonation when I do that. But I think that's what I love about sales. And I posted about that the other day too. I don't think that SAM sales is a methodology, because it's not. It's a style. It's a flavor of selling. And to me, there are so few black and whites in sales. Like, don't show up at your customer's door with a contract, black and white. Don't be late to meetings, pretty black and white. But like using cold calls, using social selling, being aggressive, whatever, it's not black and white. That's your style. I think we can be human. We can stand to be much more human and much more buyer centric.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are great examples of it. And I think, if you flip it into, it's also with those awkward questions that you're asking, if you're asking them in a way that, of course, you may need information from them about timelines or who else is going to be part of this process, but figure out a good way to ask them instead of like, who's the decision maker? It's never making the person on the other side feel good. I've gotten asked that question before when I haven't been the decision maker, or I have, and they both don't make me feel good. It feels strange doing that. And I know a lot of the conversation that we've talked about today is being a seller and how you can use Show Me You Know Me as a seller, but how can this be applied in a leadership setting?
I could talk about that forever. I'll give you a couple of quick things. We as a leader, right, whether you run your own shop like us or whether you are a leader in a massive organization, you have been trusted with one of the most important things of that business, and that's the growth of the employees that report to you, right? Their livelihood, their success, their peace of mind. You've been trusted with, that's a lot of responsibility. And I think sometimes people get into leadership because they're like, I'm a leader, I'm a VP. Yeah. Instead of thinking like, you're here for your people. You really report to them effectively. But I think the Show Me You Know Me element is who are your people? And I don't just mean like, what are their names, favorite colors, things like that, but think about, how do they like to be recognized? What are they working for? What are they motivated by? Why do they get out of bed in the morning? What gets them excited about coming to work? What are their short-term, long-term goals? Where do they want to be in 5 years? And the answer might be where you're sitting. They might say, I want your job, right? And that's okay too. One of my favorite questions to ask, like previously to SAM Sales, because I anticipate that all of our people will never leave us, is what's the next job? Once you leave, let's say, when we think about you leaving LinkedIn, right, my previous role, where are you going next and why? And I think people are like, what is happening, right? It's kind of like getting married and being like, who do you want your second wife to be, right? Like, wait, what? I thought we were in this for the long haul. But you want to know that. You want to have those honest conversations and understand who they are. And I think this is also the way that this is definitely a SAM Sales flavor and style, but I truly believe we have a responsibility and opportunity to create exceptional experiences for our people. Just really fun things by looking out for who they are and their interests, but also being in tune to what's going on in their daily lives. So the way that we promote them, the gifts that we send them at the holidays, should you happen to do that, even if it's a thank you note, think about like a little holiday note that has like their favorite animal or scenery or something on it, little things that we can do. And then I would say also thinking, Show Me You Know Me, of like what's going on in their at-home lives. For example, one of our employees this weekend unfortunately caught a stomach bug, and her husband got the worst of it, and basically spent 2 of our 4 days just looking after her kids while her husband recovered. So she didn't get a break. There was no recovery. And my note to her on Sunday was, what's your day like tomorrow? You want to take the day off so you get a day to yourself. I also tell you that You don't need to run your own company to do something like that. You just need to be human and to pay attention. And even if you work for a company that doesn't have unlimited PTO, guess what? Not everybody's going to know if somebody sneaks off for an extra few hours or takes a morning to themselves, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where a little insubordination can be really good.
Yeah, exactly. It's going a level deeper, because I mean, the main priority of leadership, or I feel like managers in a certain scenario, is and I've never been a manager before, but just as from what I've seen and what I've read and heard about, to hope to be a manager one day is, like you're there to support your people the way that they need to be supported, and getting to know them a bit further is going to be helpful, because that's, showing that you know them is really what's going to help them thrive, because you want them thriving as the individual contributor on your team too.
Totally. I think there's also, I'll say one final thing here. I think there's a lot of value in our own vulnerability to opening the door to getting to know our reps better, or whoever reports to us better. And I say that because some people don't want you to know them. They don't want to share their personal lives. They don't know if it's appropriate to talk about that. So you sharing anecdotes about what's going on in your own world, you sharing information about your failures, things like that will also you're letting your own guard down, being like, I'm human too. I think a lot of leaders make the mistake of like, I need to have all the answers. I can't show any sweating of any kind, and certainly can't show mistakes. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, here's how I messed up today. I use a different word usually, but I actively share it on a Slack channel, because we all do. The whole idea, right, in making those mistakes is that we make once, maybe make them a second time, but we learn from them. And who cares if we make them once or twice, right? Stuff happens. But think about that vulnerability too, because that can really deepen your relationships with your reports. And specifically think about that. If you're a second or third or fourth line manager, man, can that impact culture in a positive way?
Yeah, just being overall vulnerable. And I've totally felt it before with managers that I've had in the past that are really vulnerable, that it just totally switches. And same thing goes, and I could talk about this forever, is the unlimited PTO policy. I think it all depends. Like so many companies have it. Depends where you're at, and depends who the leadership is. Is your leadership actually taking advantage of taking time off, and how much time do they take off where you feel comfortable taking that time off too? But I can always go on about that.
What's the example they're setting though? You're exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, Sam, thank you so much for talking to us today a little bit more about Show Me You Know Me, and from the sales rep perspective, but then also from the leadership perspective and managing your team. Before we finish up, where can people learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, come say hello on LinkedIn, of course. We have a great newsletter that comes out twice a week, but newsletter officially on Fridays at samsalesconsulting.com. We have great events. We run monthly events. We have a women's leadership group every month, all totally free of charge. And then if you really want to nerd out, we've got some subscriptions for trainings at shorts.samsalesconsulting.com that should be really helpful to your leadership growth, your LinkedIn growth, and then sales in general.
Amazing. Ton of places to get, free help, free content from #SamSales. But Sam, thank you so much for talking with me today. And thank you everyone for listening. Yeah. Thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Shake Sales. We'll see you next time. Bye.